New year, new me. New Year's resolutions. That's what I'm going to discuss a little bit today. I start off with that New Year, New Me line because, actually, similar to the last conversation about self-help books, I've just been really adverse to. It just seems like a hollow statement. It just seems like a buzzword that is empty and that people just say as a throwaway line. And those type of people that usually say "New Year, New Me" type like lines, even if it's not that exact one verbatim, I find generally to be people that are not that intent on growth and actually following through. That line just doesn't have a lot of depth for me, and generally the people that use it don't either. So there you go. As positive as I'm trying to be lately, there's still things that just like, I don't, again, there's a lot of caveats to things and qualifiers. But anyway, yeah, so New Year's resolutions. I've never really been into them. And I think that was just because culturally, like in my household, wasn't something that we did, and I wasn't close to people that we talked about, like, oh, what's your New Year's resolution for this year? Just wasn't a thing that was around me, so it wasn't something I ever got into the pattern or habit of doing. Almost like, just like, I didn't really believe in Santa. Like, just wasn't a thing. Like, I had nothing opposing that, but it wasn't a thing in our household that was like, hey, like, let's write a letter to Santa and do this and that, and just, like, they never hyped it up. I just kind of figured out really early that Santa wasn't real and just kind of rolled with it. But yeah, New Year's resolutions are not a thing that I've ever really had around me in formative stages of my life. And I also just don't know many people who make them. But I've got some things to say about them. So, one, I think that people that use that time, for a long time, my perception of those people, they use, like, oh, it's a new year, let's do a bunch of new stuff. Like, again, it wasn't in my history or culture, or I didn't have exposure to that type of thing early on. Like, it just wasn't a thing for me. It wasn't a habit or a pattern that I'd been exposed to. That's the main reason why I would say I don't do it. But I am also just, in adulthood, have been trying to grow continually, just like trying to focus on areas that I can do better. That's not something that I focus on once a year and then try to execute or fail to execute or just say for, sake of saying it or to look good. There's a lot of things that I need to work on, and there's a lot of things that I've been focused on trying to work on. And to indulge in the annual New Year, New Me or New Year's resolution thing just seems silly and weird to me, because these are things that I believe in doing all the time and just reflecting and analyzing who you are constantly and trying to do better. So to just kind of use that mark of like, hey, it's a new year, so let's take this time to reflect. It's kind of like using Thanksgiving to be the only time that you express what you're thankful for or to think about what you're thankful for. That doesn't really make sense. However, I mean, tradition for tradition's sake is one of those things that I'm not a fan of. So I think that, expressing what you're thankful for, I don't think there's a lot wrong with that. I don't think that things can go wrong with that if you are being legitimate and truthful and honest about those things, and that I think it's good to have those conversations and verbalize those things. Maybe you don't do it that often, and that's cool to do that. So similarly, I think that New Year's resolutions, for people that actually want to follow through on them and have good intentions legitimately, I think it's weird to just leave it for that one time per year. I mean, just like the thankful thing, I think that'd be weird if that was the only time you did it. But if you did express that at the table verbally to your loved ones, the things you're thankful for, whatever, express that. If that was the only time you did it out loud in that context, ever, I think that's that also would be weird. But it's just like in addition to the other times that you would do it, and I don't see a problem with that. so much like New Year's resolutions. I think if it's the only time that you are really reflecting and I mean, you don't have to discuss your New Year's resolutions or any time that you want to grow. You don't need to discuss those things ever. But if you are a person who never discusses it and then all of a sudden you just start discussing it at New Year's, it's weird. But again, if you are kind of on a path wanting to learn and grow as a person, and you also use New Year's as kind of a way to do that, I don't think that's anything to be weird about. I think that that's just an addition to the other times that you already do it, and there's nothing wrong with that. That implies that there's something wrong if it's the only time you do it, and I think that that's the thing. I'm skeptical of people who really verbalize like, oh, here's my New Year's resolutions, or these are the ones I did last year, these are the ones I'm doing. Like, it's humble braggy and showy and weird. I tend to discuss them on a weekly basis. Generally things that I'm trying to work on. I don't think discuss like, oh, I completed this goal and now I'm on for the next goal, and I don't know, and some people do that and that's okay too. It just depends on presentation style and also how authentic you are, because I don't know, it can just turn me off completely if someone is really humble braggy or showing off or whatever, or even just, expressing a specific character that isn't really them and just living through these goals that they feel they've completed, or even taking a step further, people that talk about things they've never done, right? And I think that some people like to talk about things they want to do like it is something that they've done. It's almost like celebrating something you haven't even done yet. I think that a lot of people end up getting praise for wanting to do things, yet they haven't done them, and I feel like that's weird to kind of give praise for having a good idea or for acknowledging there's something you can do better, but not actually putting any work into it. I don't know, it's just a thing. I will say though, like again, I think that if you were using New Year's as the new year as an addition to other times in the year that you are trying to grow and learn about yourself and try to do better, then I think that's cool. Another reason I guess I'm discussing this is because just in the vlog this week I'll be talking about Reading Glasses Challenge, and it's the first time that I can think of where I've done like a challenge, like this is their challenge for the year, and it was just about reading books and doing bookish things, and it was fun. Like, it did push me to do things differently because they give you certain types of books to read or certain things to do that are book related, and I liked that. I liked having that kind of push to read different material and to do certain things that I don't think I would have done otherwise, or at least not on that priority at all, and I learned some things, and so that was cool. That's another reason I'm talking about it. But yeah, so I've been also thinking about the clean slate, and I really enjoy the clean slate. I know, like, in high school especially, like, you had a bad term or a bad semester, and then you're like, oh man, like, I really want to turn this around, and it's way easier to turn it around when you're at a clean slate, when you're at zero again, when you haven't had any poor marks or bad assignments or big, huge mistakes that you made. Like, it's just way easier because you can start building momentum rather than having to carry around the weight, if that's the type of person you are, which I generally am, carrying around the weight of my mistakes and not being able to let them go and just move on. If you can't give yourself a clean slate, sometimes time or a calendar is a good way to do that. Being like, hey, it's the start of the week, I'm going to do better this week. I tell myself that all the time. Like, Sunday is a great day to say, I'm going to go to bed early, I'm going to get a good sleep, I'm going to start the week off right. So I definitely do things like that. So I understand why wanting to use the new year, as in reality, it's just an arbitrary date, right? Like, you could use, if you're only going to do it once a year, you could use your birthday, you could use something else, like, oh, St. Patrick's Day is going to be my day to do it. But I understand new year, new me, I understand the concept and why you would do it then. And using that day as just a reflective practice, or leading up to that day and then saying, hey, now we're in a brand new year, but really it's just an arbitrary day, right? Like, it is. But I do understand the clean slate effect, and I do like that, but I also acknowledge that it's not really a clean slate. Like, I mean, the new year, it's not like it erased your mistakes. It's not like it erased your debt or whatever else, and you get to start with this clean slate and feel fresh and nice. It's just a mental trick, and if you can use that mental trick on yourself, why can't you do it any other time? Why can't you just do it at the end of your day and say, hey, tomorrow's a new day? And I think that's where this conversation just led me, is that that's something that I would like to do more often, because I definitely do sometimes as a procrastinating tactic. I definitely am like, oh, I'll do better tomorrow, and that's weak, and I don't like that. But I do find strength, and I find it a worthwhile pursuit to move on from that day or that poor decision or whatever, and tell yourself, hey, tomorrow's just a new day. Like, tomorrow, I will try to rectify this, or I will do better, or whatever, and keep recommitting to the next day. And it doesn't mean putting it off till tomorrow. It's just that using the end of the day maybe as a reflective time to say, hey, tomorrow we need to do better. Because I also have a thing that tomorrow never comes, right? It's a phrase I use a lot. Well, not so much anymore, but when people say tomorrow, oh yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, I'm like, no, you won't. Like, you have no intention on doing it today. Why? And sometimes it's because they have no intention on doing it ever, and they're just feeding you lines that say tomorrow never comes. So, on that note, though, I do think that where this led me was, I've always been pretty unsupportive, I guess, of like New Year's resolutions, or I've never just been on that train, and I'm still not. But I do think that, again, there is some usefulness to that and some worth to that, possibly depending on who you are and how you're doing it. But this kind of led me just to thinking of like, hey, I just need to do better at recognizing that every day is that opportunity to do better for the next day, and that if I really want to use that clean slate effect, okay, I have that opportunity every single day. And a day is pretty short, but I can take 5 minutes to analyze and reflect on how things went and how I can do better, and try to put things into practice for the next day, right? And just to think about, like, how am I going to do this thing? And it sometimes it takes a couple of minutes, and sometimes it might take you a lot longer to organize and plan how you're going to do things better. And maybe that's another reason why people do it once a year, is like, oh, I got Christmas holidays, things are wrapping up, I've got some time maybe to like plan and just say, I'm going to get a new gym membership, or those tropes, you know what I mean? But I do think that, working on things a day at a time, and also just, again, for me, I think like I carry a lot of weight, no pun intended, I carry a lot of weight that I would like to let go of, and I think that on a daily basis I could probably just think about, hey, this is what we're going to try tomorrow, and let's set ourselves up for success.